Number: the price of being her father. The first message my daughter sent me after 5 years of silence did not say, "Dad, I miss you." It did not say, "I'm sorry," or even, "Can we talk?" It said, "I saw the article about your company sale. Dinner Friday at 7. Bring $120,000 if you want to be part of my wedding." I read it standing alone in my kitchen at 11:52 on a Tuesday night. And the worst part was not the number. The worst part was what my heart did before my brain caught up. It hoped. For 5 years, my daughter had ignored birthdays, Christmas cards, voicemails, and the message I sent when my younger brother died. Now, one local business article had done what grief, time, and fatherhood could not. It made her remember my phone number. 3 nights later, I would sit across from her at a steakhouse while her fiancé explained that the money would repair the relationship and that I could attend the wedding if I proved I was serious about being a father. Then I would see the printed ceremony program beside her purse and realize another man was already listed to walk her down the aisle. They did not want me back. They wanted my check to arrive before I did. My name is Raymond Sutton. I was 61 years old when that message arrived, living in Overland Park, Kansas, in the same 3-bedroom house I had bought 24 years earlier when my daughter Blair was 6. I had spent most of my adult life running Sutton Climate Services, a commercial heating and refrigeration company that kept grocery stores, restaurants, medical offices, and warehouses functioning through Kansas summers and Missouri winters. I started with one van, a folding desk in a rented bay, and a toolbox my father gave me. By the time I sold a majority share to my management team and a regional partner, we employed 41 people. The sale gave me enough to slow down, stay on as an advisor, and retire without fear. A local business journal ran a short piece about the transition. Someone posted it online. Blair saw 3 useful words: successful founder, sale, retirement, and apparently that was enough to turn an estranged father into an opportunity. Blair was 30 at the time. She lived 30 minutes away in a polished apartment in Leawood and worked in brand marketing for a boutique fitness company. She was smart, funny, stubborn, and once, a long time ago, the person I knew best in the world. Her mother, Janine, and I divorced when Blair was 17. The marriage failed slowly. I worked too much, Janine resented it, and after the divorce she reduced our history to one sentence: "Your father chose work." That story was easier to repeat than the truth, and over time Blair absorbed it. "Your father cared more about the company. Your father always made money the priority. Your father thinks providing is the same thing as loving." Some of those accusations had truth in them, and that truth made the false parts easier to accept. I had worked too much. I did sometimes solve emotional problems by offering practical fixes, but I loved my daughter without reservation. After the divorce, Blair still spent weekends with me until college. I helped with tuition, bought her first decent car, and flew across the country once when a breakup shattered her. Children do not owe parents repayment for being raised. But 5 years later, when she said I had never shown up, I needed to remember that our history was more complicated than her accusation. The final break came when she was 25. She and a friend wanted to open a luxury bridal boutique in a new shopping development. Neither had retail experience. The lease alone was terrifying. They wanted $90,000 from me for build-out, inventory, and what Blair called runway. I looked at their plan, asked basic questions, and offered $10,000 as a gift if they reduced the scope and found an experienced partner. Blair heard only no. Janine told her I was controlling her with money. Blair said if I could afford to help and chose not to, then I was proving every ugly thing her mother had ever said. We argued in my living room. She shouted, "What is the point of having a father with money if he always makes you beg for it?" I remember that sentence because it was the first time I realized she had begun measuring fatherhood in access. I told her I loved her and would not finance a business I believed could hurt her. She called me a stingy old man, walked out, and blocked my number. The boutique opened anyway with money Janine borrowed against her condo. It closed 14 months later. Blair never called. Janine blamed me for letting her fail. I continued sending cards. Birthday. Christmas. Congratulations when Aunt Ellen told me Blair had been promoted. I never included checks because I did not want money to become the only reason she opened an envelope. Most went unanswered. One Christmas, the card came back marked "Return to Sender," even though the address was correct. That one sat on my desk for months. When my younger brother Patrick died suddenly from an aneurysm, Blair did not attend the funeral. She sent no text. Later, I learned she had seen the announcement online. That was when I stopped leaving voicemails. Not because I stopped loving her, because eventually hope can become a way of reopening the same wound on schedule. Eventually, I stopped chasing the silence. I built quieter holidays with friends, played terrible golf with former employees, traveled a little, and learned that missing my daughter did not require reopening the wound every week. Then came Blair's message. I saw the article about your company's sale. We need to talk. Copper and Stone, Friday, 7. Bring $120,000 if you want to be part of my wedding. Otherwise, don't waste everyone's time. I read it at least 6 times. The wedding part was news. My own daughter was engaged, and I had learned about it in a demand letter disguised as a text. I sat at my kitchen table until almost 2 in the morning, remembering her at age 8 asleep against my shoulder during a thunderstorm, at 12 begging me not to tell her friends she still liked pancakes, shaped like Mickey Mouse, at 18 crying into my shirt before I left her at college. The human heart is humiliating sometimes. Mine kept trying to turn "we need to talk" into love because the alternative hurt too much. I replied the next morning, I'll be there. I will not bring a check. I will listen. Blair answered 3 hours later, then don't make this difficult. I almost canceled. Instead, I decided I needed to see her face. Friday evening, I drove to the restaurant and arrived 10 minutes early. Blair was already seated with her fiancé. His name was Drew Callahan, 33, in medical device sales, polished in the way people are when image matters to them. He stood, shook my hand, and said, Raymond, good to finally meet you. Not Dad, not Mr. Sutton. Raymond, like we were negotiating office space. Blair remained seated for a second too long before standing. We hugged awkwardly. She smelled like the vanilla perfume she had worn since college. For one painful second, my brain supplied 100 memories at once. Then she stepped back and said, You look the same. 5 years. That was what we had. Drew ordered a bottle of wine before I arrived. Blair had already finished half a glass. The conversation began with surface facts. She worked remotely 3 days a week. Drew traveled for hospitals across the Midwest. The wedding was scheduled for December 28th at a renovated estate outside Kansas City. 140 guests. Lieve Bane. Winter garden theme. I asked how he proposed. Blair smiled for the first time that evening and told me about rooftop lights and champagne. I let myself enjoy hearing her happy for 30 seconds before Drew leaned back and said, So, we should probably get to the real reason we're here. Blair's smile vanished. He explained that the wedding budget had increased because Janine and her husband, Greg, had already contributed their fair share. Drew's parents were paying for the rehearsal dinner. Blair believed I should cover the venue balance, catering upgrade, photographer, and honeymoon deposit. Total, $120,000. That's not a wedding contribution, I said. That's a salary. Drew smiled like I had made a joke. Blair said, It's less than 3% of what you made in the sale. I stared at her. You know what I made? She looked away. Mom estimated. Of course she had. Janine had spent years claiming my finances were none of her business while tracking them like a weather service. I asked Blair what happened to the 5 years between us. Are we going to talk about that before the invoice? Her jaw tightened. The 5 years happened because you chose money over me. I said no to $90,000 for a store that closed in a year. You let it close. I did not own it. Drew held up a hand. This is exactly the cycle Blair warned me about. You turn everything into a business decision, then act confused when people experience it emotionally. He had known me 20 minutes and was already explaining my fatherhood to me. Blair looked relieved that someone else had taken over. Drew continued, We're not trying to fight. We're offering a way forward. You step up for the wedding, show Blair you're serious about repairing things, and everyone gets to move on. So I pay $120,000, and that repairs 5 years? It shows commitment, Blair said. What happens if I don't? She took a breath. Then I don't see a reason to pretend we have a relationship. There it was. Admission price. I asked for 5 minutes alone with my daughter. Drew immediately said, Anything involving our wedding involves me. I ignored him. Blair, 5 minutes. I'm asking as your father. She shook her head. Drew is my family. You don't get to separate us because you're uncomfortable. The phrase landed strangely because I had not asked her to leave him. I had asked for 5 minutes. Then a server arrived with bread, and Blair moved her purse to make room. Under it was a cream-colored booklet tied with dark green ribbon. The wedding program. I saw the front first. Blair Sutton and Drew Callahan. I should not have touched it. I did anyway, because my name was nowhere on the page she had left open. The section titled Ceremony Family listed Janine and Greg Foster, parents of the bride. Greg was Janine's second husband. He had been married to her for 9 years. I had always been civil to him. He seemed decent enough. Under processional notes, it said, "Bride escorted by Greg Foster." I looked at Blair. "Greg is walking you down the aisle?" She did not answer immediately. Drew did. He's been the consistent father figure in her adult life. I felt something inside me settle. Not explode. Settle. "And what exactly does 120,000 buy me?" Blair's face reddened. "Don't be disgusting. I'm asking because you said paying proves I'm serious about being your father. But the ceremony already names somebody else as your father." Greg showed up. "I sent you a card every birthday. Money and cards aren't showing up. You returned one unopened, because I needed boundaries." "So did I." Drew leaned forward. "Look, Raymond, no one is trying to erase you. You can attend. There will be family photos. Blair is even willing to include a father-daughter dance if this goes well." I stared at him. "If this goes well, if you actually demonstrate support instead of making everything about your pride." I turned to my daughter. "Is that how you see it?" Her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed hard. "I think if you really loved me, this wouldn't be a debate." That was the moment hope stopped arguing with reality. I did not raise my voice. I did not call her ungrateful. I did not insult Drew. I took my wallet out, placed enough cash for my share of dinner on the table, and stood. I came because I thought 5 years of silence might be ending. I was wrong. Blair said, "So you're choosing money again?" "No. I'm choosing not to buy a role you've already given away." She flinched. Drew rolled his eyes. "This is why she cut you off." I looked at him for the first time in several minutes. A relationship that requires a wire transfer is not reconciliation. It's a transaction. Then I looked back at Blair. "If you ever want to talk to me without a number attached, you know where I live." I walked out. I made it to my truck before my hands started shaking. I sat in the parking lot with the engine off and cried hard enough that I could barely see the steering wheel. Not because I had lost $120,000, because I had finally lost the fantasy that my daughter had come back for me. There is grief in giving up on a person who is still alive. Nobody brings casseroles for it. Nobody sends flowers. You just drive home and discover the house is exactly as quiet as it was yesterday, except now you know the silence is real. Saturday morning, Janine left a voicemail saying 120,000 would not change my life, but could change Blair's. Then finished with, "Be her father for once." I saved it because I was done rewriting cruel moments afterward to make them easier to forgive. On Sunday, Blair posted an engagement photograph online. She stood between Drew and Greg. Janine was beside them. Caption: "So grateful for the people who show up without conditions." I did not respond. Aunt Ellen called furious on my behalf. I asked her not to defend me publicly. "Why?" she said. "Because I'm done auditioning for my own family." That week I did something I should have done years earlier. I reviewed the financial ties I still had to Blair, not because I wanted punishment, but because I needed to understand where the relationship ended and support began. One thing remained: an investment account in my name that I had quietly built with the idea of helping Blair someday. I had never promised it. The old me might have emptied it into the wedding just to reopen the door. Instead, I left it untouched and made one rule: I would never spend money under emotional pressure again. 3 weeks later came Thanksgiving. My older sister Ellen hosted at her house in Olathe because she was tired of family holidays turning into separate camps. I almost declined when I learned Janine, Greg, Blair, and Drew were coming. Ellen said, "You don't need to reconcile. I just want one meal where nobody communicates through social media." I agreed because I trusted her, not because I expected progress. I arrived with sweet potatoes and a bottle of bourbon for Ellen's husband. Blair was already there. She looked beautiful and exhausted. Drew was wearing a quarter zip with some country club logo and talking to my cousin about a new townhome development. Janine kissed my cheek as though the last 5 years were a misunderstanding. Greg shook my hand and said quietly, "I didn't know about the money demand." I believed him. That mattered. Dinner stayed polite until dessert. Then Janine said, "Since everybody is here, maybe we can clear the air." Ellen closed her eyes. "Janine." No, this family has spent long enough avoiding difficult things. It was almost impressive coming from her. Blair stared at her pie. Drew put one hand on the back of her chair. Janine said there had been miscommunication around the wedding contribution. There was no miscommunication, I said. There was a number. She ignored that. Blair is willing to compromise. She and Drew have reduced some costs. If you could contribute $80,000 instead, I think everyone could move forward. Ellen actually laughed. Janine looked offended. What? Ellen said, you just lowered the ransom and called it healing. Blair's face flushed. Drew said that language was inappropriate. I asked Blair directly, do you want a relationship with me if I give you nothing? Nobody breathed. Blair stared at the table. That's manipulative. It's a yes or no question. Relationships require effort from both sides. Money is not effort, Drew cut in. For someone in Raymond's position, money represents effort. He has resources. This is how he can show he prioritizes her. I looked at him. You've known my daughter 2 years. You've known my bank account about 6 weeks. Somehow you're more comfortable discussing the second. Greg shifted in his chair. Janine said, Ray. I continued. And I saw the wedding program. Greg is walking her down the aisle. I'm not asking him to step aside. If that is what Blair wants, I accept it. But do not tell me $120,000 is required for me to act like a father while another man gets the father role regardless. Greg immediately said, for what it's worth, nobody asked me how you felt about that. Blair whispered, I asked you. You told me your dad had refused to be involved. Greg's eyes moved to me. I'm sorry. Blair looked cornered. He did refuse. After you demanded the money, I said. Drew muttered, here we go again. Something in Greg's face changed. What exactly did you two ask him for? Janine tried to stop the conversation. Ellen did not. No, let's hear it. Blair said the amount. Greg stared. 120,000? Drew said it was proportional to my financial position. Greg laughed once, without humor. I make good money. If my son charged me admission to his wedding, I'd tell him to pound sand. Janine snapped that he was not helping. I'm trying to understand why I'm apparently replacing a father who was never even told he was replaced until someone wanted 6 figures. The room went silent. I had spent years assuming Greg was part of the story Janine told about me. It turned out he had been handed his own edited version. Blair started crying. Why is everybody attacking me? I did not answer because I had learned that rushing to comfort her was one reason every hard moment became someone else's job. Drew did. Baby, this is exactly what your dad does. He creates a public scene so he can look reasonable and make you feel crazy. Ellen slammed her fork down. He has barely said 10 sentences. Drew told her to stay out of it. That was a mistake. Ellen had been a middle school principal for 30 years and had ended arguments between teenagers bigger than him. This is my house. You do not tell me what to stay out of. Drew went quiet. Then my cousin Daniel asked an innocent question that changed the evening. What's the rush on the money anyway? The wedding isn't until late December. Drew answered too quickly. Deposits. Blair looked at him. Ellen asked whether deposits were already due. Drew said the venue needed the balance earlier than expected. Blair frowned. You told me the venue was covered through your bonus until December. His face tightened. It was. Things changed. What changed? Can we not do this here? The phrase sounded familiar because it was the same shield everyone had used all night. Blair stared at him. Drew. He sighed and admitted his bonus had been delayed. Greg asked why. Drew said his territory had been reorganized and commissions were lower. Janine said everyone had setbacks. I asked nothing. I simply watched. Blair said, You told me you had 80,000 set aside? Drew became defensive. I did. I had expenses. What expenses? He stood. This is exactly why we needed Raymond to step up. I am not going to be cross-examined over normal financial movement. Greg said, Sit down. Drew stared at him. Greg repeated it. To my surprise, Drew sat. What came out over the next 20 minutes was not criminal. It was more ordinary, and in some ways more useful. Drew had been carrying significant credit card debt. He had leased a car he could barely afford, prepaid for parts of the honeymoon on credit, and lost money on a short-term rental investment with a friend. He had not told Blair because, in his words, I knew her father had resources. The wedding contribution had not been a symbolic test of my love. It had been the number Drew needed to keep the wedding, the honeymoon, and their planned townhouse down payment from collapsing at the same time. Blair looked at him as if he had changed shape. "You told me Dad owed me that money," Drew said. "He does. That's not what I asked." He ran a hand through his hair. "Blair, we are building a life. Your father is sitting on millions while you're starting from scratch. I have a job, a $68,000 job." The insult was small, casual, and revealing. Blair went still. Drew continued, apparently unaware he had lost the room. "We had a chance to start marriage without financial pressure. He could make that happen and refuses because he needs control." I heard my own daughter's old arguments coming out of his mouth in a smoother voice. For the first time, Blair seemed to hear them from outside herself. "So if he doesn't pay, what happens?" she asked. Drew said they would scale down. "And the townhouse? We wait. The honeymoon? We shorten it." Blair laughed through tears. "So nothing actually dies." Nobody spoke. "You made it sound like my father paying was the only way we could have a life." Drew said she was being emotional. "That was the wrong word." Blair stood. "I learned that word from my mother." Janine flinched. Blair looked at me then, not warmly, "Not yet. Did you know about his debt?" "No." "Did you look into him?" "No, I came to dinner to see you." She stared at me for a long moment. I think that answer mattered. I had not built a trap. Drew had simply talked long enough for his values to become visible. He left Thanksgiving early after arguing with Blair in the driveway. She stayed. Nobody celebrated. I did not say I told you so. I helped Ellen wrap leftovers. An hour later, Blair stood beside me at the kitchen counter and whispered, "Did you really send cards all 5 years?" I looked at her. "Every birthday, every Christmas, one promotion, one when Patrick died because I hoped grief might be the thing that got through." Her eyes filled. "Mom said you stopped trying after the first year." Janine was 10 feet away. She heard. "I said he gave you space. You said he didn't care enough to fight for me." Janine's face hardened. "I was trying to protect you." Blair laughed bitterly. "Everybody keeps protecting me by deciding what I'm allowed to know. I could have unloaded every resentment then. I did not." I told Blair, "You were an adult. Your mother influenced you, but you made choices too." She nodded, crying harder. "I know." That was the first accountability I had heard from her in 5 years. It did not repair us. It simply created a place repair might someday begin. The wedding was postponed. Then the engagement ended in February. Blair later told me, Drew became angry at every compromise once my money disappeared from the plan. She realized he had loved the future. He imagined I could subsidize almost as much as he loved her, and that realization hurt because she could see a smaller version of the same entitlement in herself. She called me in March. "No demand. No crisis. Would you have coffee with me?" she asked. I said yes. We met at a diner instead of a steakhouse. She wore jeans and no engagement ring. I expected an apology. Instead, she surprised me by starting with a question. "What did I miss?" I asked what she meant. 5 years. What did I miss in your life? Nobody had asked me that in a long time. I told her about Patrick's funeral, the company sale process, my bad golf game, Ellen, the woman I dated briefly, the trip to Montana, the time I slipped on ice and needed 6 stitches over my eyebrow. Ordinary life. Her face crumpled at the ordinary parts because estrangement is not only missing milestones, it is missing Tuesdays. She told me about promotions, fights with Janine, learning to cook, meeting Drew, getting engaged. Then she said, "I used you as a villain because it made every disappointment easier. Mom gave me the script, but I kept reading it after I was old enough to stop. I did not rush to forgive." "Yes," she nodded. "I also thought your money proved you had more to give me. I never asked what you had already given." "That's true too. Are you ever going to trust me again?" "I don't know." She cried quietly. I let her. "But I'm willing to see what you do without needing me to answer today." That became our new relationship. Slow. Public places at first. Coffee. Lunch. A walk around the arboretum. No money requests. I made that boundary explicit. If you need financial help, do not use our rebuilding relationship to ask for it. She said, "Understood." 6 months passed before money came up at all, and she brought it up herself. "Did you really have an account for me?" Janine had told her after Thanksgiving. I said yes. "Are you giving it to me?" "Not now." She inhaled, and I watched the old reaction rise. Then she let it go. Okay, that one word did more to rebuild trust than 100 apologies. Later, I used part of that account to fund 2 skilled trades scholarships in Patrick's name. When Blair learned, she asked quietly, "Was that supposed to be mine?" I said, "It was money I once imagined using to help you. That is different." She nodded. Old me would have lost her mind. I know. Current me is trying not to. I did not disinherit a child. I did not publicly humiliate anyone. I did not use wealth to make Blair crawl. I simply stopped allowing money to function as proof of love. That changed every conversation. Janine never truly accepted the new arrangement. She told relatives I had manipulated Thanksgiving, turned Blair against her, and used the wedding money to punish them. I stopped arguing. Our daughter was 30. She did not need parents campaigning for custody of her opinion. Greg, surprisingly, remained kind. He called once to apologize for believing I had abandoned Blair. "I should have asked you," he said. I assumed Janine's version was the whole story. I accepted that. Janine and I eventually stopped communicating, except when Blair's life required both of us in the same room. That was healthier than continuing an argument whose only prize was being declared the better parent. The following Thanksgiving, Blair came to my house. Just her. She brought a pie from a bakery, because she said she still could not bake. She arrived 20 minutes early and stood awkwardly in the entryway holding it with both hands. "Do you need help?" she asked. "Not money. Not rescue. Help." I handed her a bowl of potatoes and told her to mash. Aunt Ellen and a few friends came later. At one point, somebody suggested a group photograph. Blair automatically moved beside me, then hesitated. "Is this okay?" she asked. The question nearly broke me because for years both of us had treated roles as things we could assume or revoke without asking. "Yeah," I said. "It's okay." She stood beside me. When the picture was taken, nobody posted a caption about perfect family. Ellen sent it in a group text with 3 words, "Good night, everyone." I still have it. Blair and I are not the father and daughter we were before the 5-year silence. I stopped wanting that version because it included too much pretending. We are building something more adult, less automatic, and perhaps more honest. She knows I love her without promising to finance her choices. I know she can disappoint me without becoming permanently lost. There are still awkward moments. One Christmas she mentioned a car she wanted, then caught herself and laughed. Not asking. Good. We both laughed. That is what healing looked like for us. Not erasing the old pattern, but noticing it before stepping back into it. I am 63 now. I still advise at the company 2 days a week, travel, play terrible golf, and spend holidays with people who arrive without invoices. Blair visits every few weeks. The first time she called simply to tell me a story from work and asked for nothing, I sat in my kitchen afterwards smiling like an idiot. That may have been the moment I knew we had a chance. The lesson I took from those 5 years is not that adult children are entitled or parents should cut them off the first time money becomes complicated. Families are messier than slogans. I had mistakes to own. I worked too much when Blair was young. I sometimes used financial support because practical help was easier for me than emotional vulnerability. I let Janine define the narrative after our divorce, because I thought refusing to fight in front of Blair was automatically noble. Silence can look like guilt when someone else is speaking loudly, but none of those mistakes required me to buy access to my daughter. That distinction saved me. Love can include regret. Love can include help. Love can include second chances. It cannot remain healthy if one person has to keep proving affection with money while the other reserves the right to withdraw a relationship whenever the payment stops. The night Blair demanded $120,000 for me to be part of the wedding, I thought my choice was between money and my daughter. It was not. My actual choice was between purchasing temporary access to the old relationship or risking permanent distance to leave room for something real. Walking away hurt more than writing the check would have. That is why it was a boundary instead of a bargain. I also learned that protecting an adult child from every consequence can keep them from growing. When Blair's engagement ended, every old instinct told me to fix the humiliation with money. I did not. I bought coffee, listened, and later chose to help with a few therapy sessions when she asked directly. The important difference was that the help was chosen, specific, and not the price of access to her. Chosen generosity feels different in the body. Expected generosity makes you tense before the request is even complete. I trust that feeling now. The old brokerage account remains partly intact. Maybe someday I will help Blair with a home. Maybe I will not. The important thing is that neither of us treats the answer as a test of love. She has begun saving on her own. Last month, she texted me a screenshot of her account balance and wrote, "Turns out doing it slowly is annoying but kind of satisfying." I replied, "Welcome to adulthood." She sent back an eye roll emoji. I stared at that stupid little symbol longer than I care to admit, because there had been 5 years when I would have given almost anything for something that ordinary. That is the part people miss when they talk about revenge stories. The satisfying ending is not always watching someone lose everything. Sometimes it is getting something ordinary back without sacrificing yourself to obtain it. A phone call with no request, a Thanksgiving pie, a daughter standing beside you in a photograph because she wants to be there, not because a check cleared. I would choose those things over being announced as father of the bride at a wedding I had to purchase, every time. So tell me honestly, if your adult daughter ignored you for 5 years, came back only after learning you had money, and demanded 6 figures as the price of being included in her wedding, would you ever rebuild the relationship after genuine accountability and years of changed behavior? Or would that first message put a price tag on the bond that you could never unsee?